I'm building a 2-trailer tiny house and it's time for a build update. And this one is going to be illuminated. So it's really exciting to be at this point of the house where we're actually putting lighting in, but it was also really tricky. First of all, I've got a number of different dimensions to this house, unlike a normal tiny house, but also I hate the look of lighting. I don't like the look of plastic downlights shoved in the roof or bulbs hanging out. So for the most part, with the exception of a couple statement pieces, I wanted to hide my lighting. But also I wanted to be able to create a really nice mood and ambiance in the house. So I came up with this idea of trying to hide LED strips in my shadow lines. Now that was a great idea and I could do that while I was building in the interior lighting. The problem is, if I ever need to service those LED strips, I can't get in there and do that. Now, half a dead strip is probably gonna be worse to me than seeing lighting. Now, I could have done aluminium extrusions, but I really didn't like the look of seeing aluminium in the roof and plastic strips everywhere. So I wanted to try and keep with the sort of really clean, minimal look. But secondly, I really didn't want lighting down the middle of the house. As I learned from the micro tiny house, having the strips down the middle when you're sitting on the couch or you're laying on the bed, the lights are shining straight in your face, and I really didn't like that. So I came up with this idea of cutting off a 100mm strip of the ceiling panels and then coming back in later, recessing LEDs into those, hiding them behind some shadow lines, and then making those panels removable with some magnetic strips. So I could get in there and service if I need to, but also the lighting is off to the side, and when the lights are off, they're just hidden in these shadow lines down the side of the house. So it looks really nice when the lights are off, and when turn it on, these lines just start glowing in. I love that. The other thing I did was to put the lighting off to the side. I kind of wanted the light to sort of glow off of my light walls into the house and create a really nice mood in here. And I tell you what, at night it does. It feels really nice in here when these lights are on. They're infinitely dimmable, so I can sort of create a different mood in here. However, it was probably the best idea for that reason and the worst because it was an absolute nightmare. When you shine light down across the surface, you've got to get it spot on because it shows up every imperfection. And if you're following along as I was doing the interior lighting, I had to replace this piece here and fix one in the main trailer there because the shadow line was actually a little bit proud of that lower sheet. And even though it was just a little bit, when the light shining across it, it made that shadow line look terrible. So I had to redo them, which was just a nightmare. And I was really questioning my decision at that time. But now that it's done, I'm really happy with it. And the trick that I've got to do now is make sure I balance the lighting because at nighttime, the lighting is a little off balance, but I haven't finished yet. So in the lounge room, I'm hoping to do some statement pieces, if the budget can stretch to it, up there, sort of on the walls. And in the kitchen there, there'll be some task lighting. And in the bedroom here, there'll be some lights next to the bed. So I can create this balance of lighting, sort of control each of them to be able to create a mood. But the lighting off to the side now is actually really nice. At nighttime, you can dim them down, and you get this soft glow through the house, and you don't have those lights shine directly in your face. Now these things were an absolute nightmare to make, and I tell you what, if you want a tutorial on how not to do lighting, this is it. Making these things, and I'll explain in a minute, was just terrible, but I persevered, and I'm really glad that I did because I love how they've come out. They look smick. When the lights are off, it looks really minimal in here. And when I turn them on, they just glow into the house and I love it. So let's go have a look how I made the lights. So the design of these things is really simple, but the execution has just been anything but. So in essence, these panels are just the same as the rest of the panels that have lined the interior of the house. 9mm ply with the rebaited shadow lines that overlap. But that's where the simplicity ends. So to create the lights, what I've done is rebaited these grooves along the length of these panels and then put the LED strips in behind there. Now I've gone with cob LEDs because there's sort of up to about 500 LEDs per meter, and they're packed really densely together. So you actually get this really continuous glow of light as opposed to other LED strips where you can see the dots of every LED. So they look really nice inside here. And while you can see the yellow of the LED strip now, when it's up in the ceiling and there's up inside that groove, you can't actually see the LED strip. So it just looks like these shadow lines or sort of vents up in the ceiling until you turn them on, and then these lines start to glow, so it looks really good. Now, unlike all the other panels in the house, I can't glue these in because I need to be able to get in here and service the LEDs if I ever have a strip die or part of it start to die. So to hold them in place, I've created a way that makes them look like they're permanent, but I can remove them if I need to. The first thing I've done is put this large rebate along this side here that goes up against the wall. Then, when I was setting the panels on the wall, I very carefully set the height of the top of the walls so that this rebate can slip over the top of the wall panels, and that will support the light. So if we've got our large rebate here and our wall panel, this light panel can slip up over the top and sit on top of the walls. Then on the inside, I still get my 5mm shadow line along here that matches the ceiling of in the rest of the house. Now on the opposite side, along here, there's a series of magnets. Those magnets adhere onto the back of these aluminium plates, and when I was putting the ceiling in, I've already put the structure up in there to screw the magnets up into them. Now these things are a pain in the butt to make. Even though it looks simple, just cutting a line in there, it almost did my head in. I think I made 13 of these just to get 5. I wrecked that many. So first of all, I made up a jig that allowed me to set these in and run the router along there and get nice, smooth, consistent lines at the same distance every time. Now, one of the problems I had was, first of all, the lines are different distance from the edges here. So each time I was doing a line on a different side, I had to reset the jig, which was a pain in the butt. But the main problem I had was when I'm cutting these grooves through here, these pieces of plywood get really thin and flimsy. And so, as you can see, when the grooves are cut out, these flex really easy, particularly on these pieces that are almost 2.4 meters long. And I was doing my first bit, I was doing one of my first long bits. I was running the router through it, and the problem is you've got this router that's coming around the cutting edges, pulling the timber, and it was sort of moving these as it was cutting and just mangled up the line. And the first one I wrecked was actually one of these long pieces, and I didn't have any more plywood, like none spare, that I could make one of these long ones. I ended up having to redesign a door so I could redesign the cabinetry in my bathroom and change the way I'm doing that wall so I could free up a piece of plywood just to make some extras. And I ended up using most of that board in the end. Anyway, to overcome that, what I had to do was, after I cut the rebate in the back that accepts the LED strip and its aluminium backing, was I had these pieces of timber cut perfectly that I would lay down into the back here, and then when I flipped it over and that was held in the jig and I was running the router along there, that stopped these pieces from being able to move so that I got a nice sharp line and not whatever it wanted to do. So it was a tedious process, and I didn't get that in prototyping because I was only just dealing with short boards, which, you know, the length was too small for these to flex too easy. So it was definitely a learning experience as I started cutting them. So with those cut, we flip over onto the back and we get to the business side of these things. So on the back here, you see these large aluminium plates. Now these perform a couple functions. The first and main primary thing they do is to give structure to this board. So as you can see, once we've cut grooves in these, they become really flimsy, particularly these long ones. So these aluminium plates actually strengthen that plywood and give it its rigidity back and stops those from moving. It holds these pieces perfectly aligned, so I'll get nice sharp lines there that have my LED strips shining through. The second thing they do is to dissipate the heat of the LED strips. So LED strips create quite a bit of heat, and I need to be able to remove that. So by putting this large aluminium plate on the back, it acts as a heat sink and pulls that heat away and keeps them nice and cool. Now, the problem with that is aluminium expands when it heats up. In fact, a piece of aluminium this long is going to expand almost 2.5 millimeters, which is going to be a serious problem because the plywood does not expand like that. So you get one side of it pushing out and it actually end up bowing the whole light structure. So that wasn't going to work at all. So instead, what I've done is I've broken these up into sort of 500 mil sections and left gaps between them. That allows these plates to expand and contract. Now, the shorter piece is only going to expand by about 0.2 or 0.3 of a millimeter, so it's much, much less. But also what I've done is these center row of screws here are actually really tight with the screws. So there's no movement in the holes, which holds that nice and tight and holds the board nice and firm. But these outer set of screws, I've enlarged the holes so it allows this plate to expand and contract against the board without pushing up against those screws. So it allows movement for this plate to be able to expand in and out as the temperature changes without affecting the plywood underneath it. So I get structure, and then I get these nice heat sinks that's pulling all the heat out of the LEDs. So I've opened up one of these small ones so you can see the anatomy of how I've put these lights together. I've stuck the LED strip down onto some 10mm aluminium flat bar, and that performs a couple functions. First of all, it centers the LED strip down inside my rebate and keeps that nice thin line perfectly aligned with the groove that I've cut through my panel. And that stops the LED from moving inside that rebate, keeps it nice and aligned, stops it from buckling or moving because you can actually see the LEDs on the other side here. Secondly, these aluminium strips push up against the back of these aluminium plates. So that allows me to transfer the heat from these LED strips through up to these large aluminium plates that act as heat sink. So the last thing to do was to wire these things up, and all I had to do was solder some wires onto the end of the LED strips and put a plug on there to make it easier to connect into the wires that I've already got inside the house there. And you'll also notice on these larger ones that I actually have an extra wire running down to the opposite end of the LED strips, and that injects power at both ends of the LED strip. So the one thing with LEDs is over a longer distance, you'll start to get voltage drop the further it gets away from the power source, just through the resistance of the strip. So if you inject power at both ends, you get a consistently lit strip all the way along. So that's the main lighting done. I love how it's come up. So the next steps is to finish off that shower. It's almost done. Almost done with the tiling. Just put a shower screen on. Then I'm moving on to the bedroom. I'm going to start building the bed in here, getting that lift up bed working. And I've met with the cabinet maker to start designing up all the joinery that goes through here and through there. Now I'm building my own joinery and I've designed it all myself, but I'm having a cabinet maker cut it out because, let's be honest, I don't need to be messing around trying to cut out stuff when they just do it all on a CNC. So hopefully that won't be too far away. And once I put cabinetry in here, we'll get this wall built in here. It's going to start seriously taking shape and start to move towards the end of the build. So I'm pretty excited for that. You guys know the drill. Don't hate, educate. Comment down below if you see something that can be improved, or if you've got any questions about how I've done the lighting. If you're one of those crazy buggers still watching, make sure you show us those two hands in the comment. And in the meantime, go build cool stuff. I'll see you again soon.